This is the lecture for Chapter 1 on the human body and orientation. And we're going to start with making sure that you guys know the definition of, the name of your course, basically. You always need to know, that. You need to know what you're studying. So, when you study anatomy and physiology, you're studying the human body. But what exactly is anatomy and what is physiology? So the anatomy part is when we memorize like the body structures, when we learn the bones, we learn the muscles, and we learn the nerves, the structures are the anatomy part. But the structure of a body part determines its function, and the function is the physiology. So anatomy is structure, physiology is function. And it's really, I personally don't think you can study one without the other. How do you study how something works if you don't learn the names of the parts, and what each individual part is and what it looks like? And then how do you study structure without learning what it does? I mean, you can learn names of things, but when you don't know what they're for, what does it mean? So that's why we teach anatomy and physiology together. So I'm sorry, I'm just using these slides for the first time, and I just noticed this. So we're saying that for simplicity, when we see reference values and structures, they're going to correspond to either a healthy young male weighing about 155 pounds, which I can tell you, I have a son who is a healthy young male. He's 16, about to turn 17, and he weighs about 155 pounds, maybe a little bit less, and he's 6 feet tall, and he is very, very thin. He needs to put on some weight, in my opinion. And the reference female is a healthy young female weighing about 125 pounds, which was me in 7th grade maybe, but definitely not today. But anyway, this is funny to me. I'm sorry. I don't know if it is to you or not, but it is to me. Now we're going to move on to section 1.1, a little bit more information about anatomy versus physiology. Make sure you know that the anatomy determines the physiology. In other words, the structure or form determines the function. That's the relationship between anatomy and physiology. The structure determines the function. We are going to use the terms male and female to reflect the reproductive anatomy of, I know it's important that I like this part of the slides. I never use slides that clarified this. But in today's world, we need to clarify what we mean when we say male and female in this class. We need to clarify what we mean when we say sex and when we say gender. So the sex of a human, is going to refer to a set of biological attributes. It's going to be based on chromosomes. In other words, it's going to be based on XX. Sex chromosomes are going to represent a female and XY represent a male. But it is also going to be based on the gene expression and hormone action. So if a person, for example, is testosterone, has, I forget the name of it, but there is I guess you say it's not really a disease, but there's a condition that someone can have where their body doesn't react to testosterone, so they can produce all the testosterone in the world, but if their body doesn't, it's insensitivity. That's what it's called. Testosterone insensitivity. Sorry it took me so long to remember that. But that would cause someone whose chromosomes make them male to actually develop as a female. So when we say male or female, we're referring to, primarily it's going to be, males are going to be XY, females XX, And males are going to have the male reproductive anatomy, and females are going to have the female reproductive anatomy. Males are going to have a penis, and females are going to have a vagina, and ability to make a baby, to have a baby, give birth, that kind of thing. So sex is going to refer to that, and gender is going to refer to the psychosocial construct consisting of behaviors, expressions, and identities. Gender is going to be more fluid in our definition. There's man, there's woman, there's transgender, non-binary, etc. And so gender is going to refer to more of the, I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry. It's more the identity, whereas sex is going to refer more to the biology. Okay. So hopefully that's clear. If it's not, please let me know. And if this is something that you want, you want more clarification on, or you're more interested in, don't hesitate to email me, about it. I try not to say, I try to say a little bit about it, but I don't want to say too much, because sometimes people are good with everything. But if you want more information, or if you're confused, or if you don't like, even if you don't agree with what I just said, just email me if it's a concern that you have. Don't be afraid to. I try to be an open-minded person, and I try to understand that everybody's different. Everybody has, you know what I mean? So anyway, I didn't really expect that slide. These slides are not, just so you know, I'm looking at them for the first time, and I'm making brand new recordings, and I tend to just say whatever I'm thinking in the moment. So I'm seeing this for the first time, and it's the first time I've seen our slides kind of reflect the world as it is right now, not 20 or 30 years ago, but today. And today we do use these terms a little differently, and they mean different things to different people. So I'm kind of glad for this, for this slide, and glad to be able to acknowledge it. Now I'm going to skip this one. I will tell you that sometimes you'll see the word gross anatomy, and I think that's funny, because a lot of times we think about anatomy, we think about dissections, and dissections are gross, but the word gross here just means big. It means macroscopic. It means that when we study gross anatomy, we're studying structures we could see without a microscope. But there are two areas of anatomy that actually have to have a microscope, and that would be cytology, study of cells. Cyto means cell, logy means study of. Cytology is the study of cells, and that's going to be our chapter 3. Chapter 2 is chemistry, chapter 3 is cytology, and then chapter 4 is histology, and that's the study of tissues. Histo is tissues. So histology is the study of tissues, and that's going to be our chapter 4. So it goes chapter 1, which is basically we go over the language of anatomy and physiology. We go over the names of body regions and things like that. And then chapter 2 is a chemistry review. Chapter 3 is study of cells, and chapter 4 is study of tissues. Then we go into, every chapter will be a certain body system. So I'm going to skip some of this because we don't have time to cover every single thing. But this page is just reminding you about the relationship between anatomy and physiology. And it is called the principle of complementarity. The principle of complementarity of structure and function is just this whole idea that the structure determines the function. The structure of the teeth determines what they do. These teeth, called incisors, they are shaped for cutting. So you can bite into a carrot and cut the carrot because of the sharp incisors. And then the teeth in the back, the molars, are shaped for crushing. So when we start chewing our food, we use our molars typically. So the structure determines the function. That's the principle of complementarity. Something else that's important is to understand the levels of organization of the human body. Start with the simplest and go to the most complex. So we're going to start with the chemical level, which will be atoms, and then combinations of atoms will form molecules. Then we'll go to the cellular level, and combinations of molecules are going to build the cell parts that we call organelles. So organelles would come next, and then all the organelles and surrounded by the plasma membrane, that would be a cell. So we have atoms, molecules, organelles, cells, and then groups of cells form tissues, groups of tissues form an organ, and then groups of organs form an organ system. And then all the organ systems together form the organism, which is the human. And we have a picture here that goes through all of these atoms. Groups of atoms form molecules. Groups of molecules form organelles, like this is showing you a mitochondria. These atoms are, the black one is carbon, the red ones are oxygen, I think, yeah, and the blue ones are hydrogen. So the molecule that you see on top here has a carbon in the center and 2 oxygen atoms on each side. So that's carbon dioxide that we breathe out. And then below that, you see a water molecule, oxygen in the middle and 2 hydrogen atoms attached to the oxygen. So atoms, combinations of atoms form molecules, and then molecules combine to form organelles like the mitochondria and other organelles, the nucleus, for example. And then all the organelles surrounded by a plasma membrane form a cell. And here you see a smooth muscle cell, like the smooth muscle that lines our blood vessels. And then the cells, groups of cells can together can form a tissue. So what we're looking at next is smooth muscle tissue. And then different tissue types can form an organ. This organ is a blood vessel, and it's composed of inside lining and outside lining, which is epithelial tissue. And then there's a connective tissue in between the linings and the smooth muscle layer. Then there's a muscle layer, and there's probably even nervous tissue that connects to it, because you have to have nervous tissue to tell the blood vessels to constrict or dilate. So we have at least three different tissue types represented in this organ. So tissues grouped together can make up an organ, and then organs grouped together, like blood vessels plus the heart, makes up the cardiovascular system. So that would be our organ system. And then the organism here, you can see the young man playing soccer. And so the organism is all of the organ systems together that makes the organism. So again, levels of structure: atoms, molecules, organelles, cells, tissues, organs, organ systems, organism. And then there are 11 organ systems: the integumentary, which is the skin; the skeletal, which is the bones; muscular, which is your skeletal muscles; nervous is your brain and spinal cord and your nerves; endocrine are your glands, which produce hormones; cardiovascular is the heart and blood vessels; lymphatic is your lymphatic vessels and your lymph nodes; and your immune system is included in the lymphatic system. Respiratory is your lungs, digestive is stomach and intestines, urinary is kidneys and bladder, and reproductive, male and female reproductive, of course, are the reproductive organs. So what you need to know at this point for chapter 1 is just the name of all the organ systems and the main structures in the organ systems. You don't have to be an expert on them, but you have to know what they are. So for the integumentary system, I would expect you to know that that includes the skin, the hair, and the nails, and it also includes sweat and oil glands. Okay. For the skeletal system, that is your bones and your joints. Your muscular system is referring to skeletal muscles, the ones that are connected to your bones that allow you to move. There's other muscles. There's cardiac muscle, but that's included in the cardiovascular system. And there is smooth muscle, and that's included in other body systems. But skeletal muscles, when we talk about the muscular system, that is specifically skeletal muscles. The nervous system is the brain, the spinal cord, and your nerves, which are attached to them. The endocrine system includes the glands that produce hormones. The cardiovascular is the heart and the blood vessels. Lymphatic and immunity includes your lymphatic vessels and your lymph nodes and organs like the spleen and the thymus and the red bone marrow. These are all part of the lymphatic system. Respiratory system is the lungs and the airways. The digestive tract actually begins at the mouth and ends at the anus. So it's the entire tube. So it goes mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus. But then there are accessory organs of the digestive system, like the liver and the gallbladder and the pancreas. All right, then we have the urinary system, the kidneys, the bladder, the urinary bladder, the tubes that lead to the bladder called the ureters. You have the reproductive systems for the male. It's going to be the penis, the testes, the scrotum, the prostate gland. In the female, it's going to be the mammary glands, the ovaries, the uterus, the vagina. All right, so we are going to stop here, and we will start with section 1.3 in the next recording. And that will be slide number 32. So we actually stopped with slide 31.